Welcome back. What did you think of the season 14 Married at First Sight reunion? In this video, I want to get us up to speed where we left off decision day last time up until now. My thoughts about the reunion and talk about the couples that are still together and those that aren't. As always, hit my subscribe button and let's start a conversation in the comments. Welcome to Reality TV Therapy with me, Dr. Diane. Welcome back. I said in my last video, I'm recapping the season so you don't have to. My God, 38 episodes, that's a lot. But I'm new to Married at First Sight, so how do you think season 14 compared to the others? Because I've been reading a lot of comments on YouTube and on social media, and what I've been hearing is that people are complaining, like I have, that I don't see enough of the experts. Now, I watched the show for this very reason because I do believe with the help of good therapists that people can learn something and improve their relationships. And on reality dating shows, I'm really tired of seeing the producers use people for fame and not care about them enough. But I've also heard that Married at First Sight wasn't always this way, that the experts at one point were more involved and people liked that more. So what's changed? I know as a show continues, this show or any other show, what happens that more and more people are attracted to the show for clout. But in this case, the stakes are still really high, right? You're getting married. But the success rates need to prove that the process works. And this is why we're talking about it. Now, I still can't wrap my head around how I would trust an expert so much that I would put the future into these three people's hands, right? The commitment is so big to be married at first sight. You really do have to go all in. Even if you wanted followers, let's face it. And you can also walk away with a really bad at it, as we know some people have. But it sounds like for season 15, Dr. Viviana won't be on at all. And of all the experts, I actually liked that she was the only licensed psychologist, though. And I think she's in a tough position, right? Because she's trying to encourage the couples to be more intimate, but some people say maybe that's too much. And I did see her standing up against some toxic behaviors. We're going to get to more of that. But at this point, we have two couples out of the 5 that are still together. Now, if you haven't finished watching, please stop here. I do not want to spoil it for anyone. But if you have, let's continue. So now let's talk about the first couple. That's Olajuwon and Tina. Kevin, the host on the reunion, says they're the couple that just makes you smile. Is that how you felt? Because seriously, Kevin, this couple made me cringe. The entire season, I was worried for Tina. I thought this was a couple that was hard to watch. Tina's bags under her eyes get worse as the season goes on. She really looks beaten down, that she's lost her self-esteem in this relationship. I was happy that on the reunion, not only did she look great, but she looked like she had found herself again, and that was refreshing. But they're trying to brush everything under the rug. Like, oh, look at what a big, pretty ring she has. And yes, while Olajuwon did grow some, I'm happy for him, and I'm mostly happy for them. But are we rewarding him for merely accepting his wife? This feels pretty basic to me. And did he only change because he got called out, right? He said in the reunion, part 1, that he had to read these messages. And of course, people were saying, Tina, get the heck out of there, run from him. This guy is not only, very traditional in his expectations, but he wasn't really paying attention to how Tina felt. And that was my biggest issue. Now, I also do appreciate we learn out more about O, and that is that he has ADHD. This can account for some, but not all his behaviors, right? So he info dumps, we call that when you overshare when he's anxious, and he forgets people's names, right? In the outtake, they were kind of like making fun of this, that Olajuwon couldn't remember even his wife's name. But this is a common problem for people who are neurodiverse. and ADHD is considered that. So while that's an explanation, my real concern is this couple going to be able to sustain any gains? Because I said last time, I still really want Katina to say, dude, I'm in school. This is who I am. This is what I expect from you. And let's not focus so much on what she needs to do as a wife, but let's focus on the we, right? On the couple, not just what each of them should be doing, but how they should be coming together. And I liked that Katina did say when she was talking with the women, how she stands up to herself now. I thought, this is great. Let's hope that that continues, because I think this couple still has some work to do, as they all do, right? Couple number 2, Steve and Noi. Now, they feel a little bit more solid to me. I said in my last video that Noi and Steve, they talk about how they make each other feel secure. Noi certainly says that Steve makes her feel secure and safe. Steve is more mature, right? He has more life experience. He's 38. They both want children soon. They have this common goal. And I worried, though, that the producers were, as they have in other shows, they might try to present Noi as maybe more demanding and more difficult. I don't get these edits, right? Because if this is a couple that's a success, then wouldn't they want us to see them getting along? And everyone else seemed to think that they had a really good relationship too. So to me, that was a real vote of confidence. But I don't imagine that Noi got everything that she wanted. Did she put on her list of the 5 things that she wanted an unemployed man, especially given Noi's background, that she had some financial insecurity? But here's what I'm guessing. I'm guessing that Steve is more financially secure than they want to make him out to be, right? It's like they're grasping for straws. But let's face it, he shows up. He's wearing nice clothes. He gives her a ring after the decision day. And he had money to actually travel. Call that privilege. But I think this couple is coming nicely together, and that was just the storyline that they were amping up. Now, for me, what's more interesting is when they got into a fight, that fight about the noodles, right? That Noi got up and left, and she needed some time to herself. Now, one might say in attachment style that she's a little bit more avoidant. She manages stress by going off on her own. She needs time to process, be by herself. And that's perfectly fine. But she will need to learn how to talk about that, right? She has to tell Steve, hey, I need some time to myself. I'm coming back. Because the way that that was left last time sort of left us dangling, right? Steve's wondering, is she okay? What happened? And even Dr. Pepper talked about, right, that she and her husband live separately. But they didn't have young kids and they weren't starting out in a relationship. And lots of people say, Dr. Pepper, let's talk about how couples can work on living in separate homes. But we haven't heard back from Dr. Pepper. At least I hadn't heard anything on her social media. I personally can't imagine living separately from my husband, but if it works for them, then great. So what I did want to say is that these 2 couples that worked, I think what's so important to talk about is they worked because there was mutual attraction, right? Attraction is ultimately so important. But when you have only 5 traits to write down, do you always put an attractive person? And attraction is also so subjective. But here's the thing. Attraction is really the glue. Because if you feel attracted to the person, we assign other positive traits and values, right? In fact, sociological studies have been done about this. Like take people who are candidates for an interview. If that person is attractive, sometimes you see other positive traits. You think they're more successful or they're more likable. And that's what is the glue that keeps couples together, right? Because when you have a fight, you need to be able to look at your partner with love. And if you don't have attraction, it's very difficult to be able to work on all these other things. And it's very difficult to be intimate with someone that you're not attracted to. Which brings me to the remaining 3 couples that didn't work. Let's start with Alyssa and Chris, right? They're calling them the shortest couple that ever was on Married at First Sight. I thought, honestly, at the reunion that the experts were hard on Alyssa, but they haven't had any contact with Alyssa up until that point. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Do you think that Alyssa deserved what she got? Now, I do think part of the problem and why Alyssa is ruffling so many feathers is that everyone thought that Alyssa should have tried harder. But what do you think? When you know you're not attracted to someone, should you just walk away or should you try harder? Because I think Alyssa just knew on the honeymoon that they weren't a fit. Now, what I will say is, of course, Alyssa said some harsh things about Chris, and that's the part that wasn't fair. And this is the part that I would have expected an expert to come in and put a kibosh on that. And Alyssa said herself, where are the experts, right? She questioned even Chris's loyalty on the reunion, and I thought that really wasn't fair. But Alyssa had a hard time kind of qualifying things. And so she said that Chris and her were different. They had different values. What does she mean by that? Well, I did a little digging, and what it meant is she saw a picture of Chris on social media with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, and that's not her. She has very differing values, right? She likes shooting guns. She likes cowboys. Sounds like they're politically quite different. So they're quite different, and I think she knew that. Yes, of course, Alyssa could have been much softer, but she reminds me a little bit of Noi. That's why I'm talking about it. A little bit more on the avoidance side, right? Alyssa is not a touchy person. She didn't like that Chris wanted to talk. She didn't like that Chris was in there. That to her was just too much. And so I want you to think of this. It's like opposites attract. So Alyssa, though she says she wants closeness, right? She can't tolerate too much of it. She wanted separate sports, right? You're on your paddleboard and I'm on mine. She didn't even want to play tennis with Chris. And all of that felt like it was very intrusive to her. And I think Alyssa has felt misunderstood before. And that's why she kept saying, I'm a good person, right? So what bothered me was on the reunion. Okay, the experts were clearly Team Chris. I don't know how neutral that was. Now, Dr. Viviana on the reunion pulls out, right? I've got receipts. This is what you said that you wanted. But they're trying to convince Alyssa that she should have been happy with that. And this is such a hard thing to do because I think what's so hard is that when you have only 5 words to qualify someone, maybe you don't even know yourself well enough to say that. Did everybody else get exactly what they asked for? But part of the way that they're presenting it, and even Dr. Pepper, Dr. Schwartz, she said that, you know, Alyssa, you have too many things on your list. And I would just expect that, you know, we can't fulfill that. But what did Alyssa have on her list? She had some good things, right? I want somebody who's compassionate, funny, giving, hardworking, loyal. What I think and what I imagined a softer, kinder interaction could have happened was something like, Alyssa, we're sorry that we felt like we failed you. We actually did feel that we did the best match based upon your list, but maybe you were looking for somebody different. And maybe in your future moving forward, you don't want to deny how important physical appearances is to you, okay? Give her an out. Don't tell her that this was a great match. She disagrees. But maybe if you were to go through that process, because all the other girls, by the way, seem to know Alyssa very well. In a short amount of time, they said, girl, you need a cowboy. You need somebody more rugged, maybe athletic, confident, maybe like more cocky. Somebody, say, a more manly man. Somebody who also has good teeth, maybe has a tattoo. Hardworking, which I actually thought Chris was, and someone who's patient. So I would encourage Alyssa to just basically rewrite her list, recognizing that, yes, we don't get everything on the list, but I think sometimes it's very hard for women in particular to have permission to say that this is exactly what I want. And the trouble is, even if she said that, were they going to be able to deliver that? So I get it. And I actually felt bad for Alyssa because she feels attacked. She doesn't feel validated. And yes, she was a little rough around the edges. Sure, she should have, not said mean things about Chris to sort of pit them against each other. But another therapist intervention would have been if the therapists were there on the honeymoon and they came over and said, Alyssa, we get it. You're unhappy with us, but please don't take it out on Chris. This is his wedding day too. He's over here very upset, feeling like he's not good enough. And how can we go about you saying you're not attracted to him, but for him to not take that personally? So this is where I see a kinder, softer, gentler intervention could have happened. And I think we could have prevented this whole reunion from being as kind of negative and toxic as it was. So that's how I feel, and I want to land that. But I also wanted to give you a personal story, because part of my story and my platform is that I got married later in life and I dated a ton too. And at one point I did actually go to a matchmaker. And I asked this person, of course you go through the list of what you're looking for. And, I'm a psychologist. I was looking for someone who was tall and smart and athletic and, somebody accomplished, that we would be well matched. But I specifically said, I want a man who's 6 feet or taller, because I'm 5'10". I'm a tall woman and I wanted somebody tall. And the matchmaker says to me explicitly, well, you're going to have to compromise on some things and maybe you're not going to find somebody who's tall. And I said, what I hear you saying is that you don't have anybody tall in your database right now. I so appreciate your honesty and your truth about that, but I really don't want to feel like I'm being talked into something else. So thank you so much. I don't think I'll be using your services. And that's what Alyssa was saying, right? She was saying, listen, I would have rather had you not match me with someone else, but she doesn't get that chance, right? She's putting her trust in them and only gets to see this person on the wedding day. So that's my advice, that sometimes people just can't give you what you need, and you need to know that too, right? Okay. So let's talk about the next couple, which is Lindsay and Mark. And boy, oh boy, there are just red flags all over this relationship. I'm not even sure what to say. It's a mystery to me how it lasted so long. But this couple in particular was really hard to watch. There was some really negative, toxic behavior that I thought just should have been intervened earlier. In the first part of the reunion, Lindsay is reading Mark this letter about how lucky he is to get the Lindsay effect. But and that she didn't get much in return, but here's the thing. Mark didn't want the Lindsay effect. And I think I want you to think about this in your own relationship too, because sometimes we can get into this martyr position. Look at all the things I'm doing for you. I'm helping you organize. I'm helping you get your house together. I'm helping you with your bills. But what is the person experiencing on the other end? They're feeling like they didn't get it right. Nothing they do is right. And this is more about you than them. And this is how I felt about Lindsay and Mark. That Lindsay has a big heart. She's very capable, very confident. But what she missed is that Mark is saying, all of this is unsolicited. I know my life is in a mess. But all she had to say is, Mark, what were you going to do about it? Did she really need to give up a day of her work and go move in and kind of take over? I didn't think that she was listening. And that was a big problem that I had. So Lindsay kept saying that Mark is a sort of a people pleaser. But Lindsay, at the end of the day, really needed a stronger person, right? She needed a stronger person, and maybe on her list, she said that she wanted a kind, nice person. But I think Lindsay really needs someone like Alyssa too, just more kind of confident, more established, and there would be respect there. Now, Mark plays some part in this too, because I'm trying to be neutral. And he admitted that if he had to do all over again, that he would have spoken up more, particularly at the beginning. And this is why, to me, the therapist not coming in till episode 15 is just too late. Because the beginning part, as I've said, is so fragile, and that they would have needed intervention sooner, right? And this is why Mark needed to turn to his bromance guys and needed to turn to the other guys to say, like, help me out here. I think I need to set some boundaries. And he needed some validation. But Mark felt bullied. And this is not something that anyone should feel on a show. You know, obviously, I'm sure this isn't what Mark's top 5 were, right? I don't think Mark was Lindsay's top 5. And I thought this couple also was just not well matched. They're talking about two kind of extroverted people, but that's not the same as one person being an anchor, more like Steve and Noy, anchoring to each other. But Mark is the shark, right? And he's outgoing, and I think they thought that that was good enough. But there wasn't any balance here, right? One person isn't soft enough to balance that out. And you know, Pastor Cal did tell Mark that he didn't appreciate his, or say out loud sort of his appreciation for Lindsay more. And that she really needed that, right? She needed to soften too. And finally, on the reunion itself, it was painful for Lindsay to even apologize to Mark. You know, O had to convince her, you know, Lindsay, you're not going to look good. But there was something missing for me there. And that was recognizing the impact, right? Mark had felt that Lindsay had spit on his shirt. Can you imagine if a man had spit on a woman's shirt, right? That would have been called out. And I felt like this was another sort of missed opportunity, right? Why are we pushing this under the rug? And why are we waiting till the end on the reunion part 1 where we're doing like a funny story about Mark saying no and Lindsay keep pushing? That's not funny. We need to be talking about respecting each other's boundaries. But if I look at who Mark and Lindsay are, they're just very different people. And so when Dr. Viviana, I thought it was, said that they're very similar, I thought, I don't think so. I disagree. Mark is more of a softer kind of homebody. He doesn't want to try sushi. He doesn't want to do exorbitant things. And Lindsay does, right? She's an adventurer. She's a traveler. She needs a super smart person. I do actually think, and she's living right now in my neighborhood in Palo Alto, that she might have a little bit more luck here. I think the men might be a little bit more accomplished for Lindsay. I'll leave it at that. Next, let's talk about Jasmina and Michael. So many followers and fans wanted them to work up to stay together, right? I never got it. This actually confused me. I said right from the beginning that Jasmina herself, she needs someone who's a consistent communicator. And Michael was not that. He was never that. I agree with the women that Jasmina is a very smart person. And I think the problem was just she was never attracted to Michael, right? But she wasn't going to talk about that openly because she saw wasn't a good look on Alyssa. And I think the group can't help but notice how everyone will point that out, right? So Alyssa was being blamed for not trying harder, and Jasmina said, I can't be that, right? So I'm going to try the best I can to stick it out. But they never got intimate because she was never there, right? And Michael was in an awkward position because he can't really push her boundaries. I don't think that he should have romanced her more. But this is where I think truly that if the experts would have intervened sooner, we might have seen something else. Because right from the beginning, you saw how Jasmina's face dropped when she found out that Michael had not one, but 2 female roommates. And what happened is right from the beginning, trust was a problem. And Jasmina said it best, right? When you don't get wet, you don't get wet. And you can't feel like there's intimacy when you don't truly trust someone. So at that point, all the intimacy exercises, all the whipped cream in the world isn't going to fix this. Doing all the inner child revealing of past stories is not going to fix that. Because if you start out with oops, thinking that your spouse is negative as she heard from his family, and then thinking that he is lying to you. Where do we go from there? And Michael, he was asking the guys for feedback. I heard Michael reaching out for help on how to be vulnerable. The whole time he said, I need to work on this. And I felt like the exercises weren't matching what the bid was, the need. He said he needed that. So I didn't like the message that the experts gave Jasmina and Michael, that if only they would have given it more time or tried harder. I think the experts need to say, you know what? We did think that we did a nice job on the matching, but we didn't realize that Michael just couldn't get there in terms of the consistency and the communication. And that, to me, would have just felt more authentic, right? Because this was a struggle. So overall, what do I think about the show, right? We have 2 couples that work, again, because of mutual attraction. I think we have 3 that didn't work because there was no attraction there between those 2, and it's very hard to convert that. But for me, let's talk about the reunion. I think there's just obviously a lot of fillers there, right? The women are having like a little bit of a cat fight, and who's not following Lindsay on social media, who's blocking each other. And I'm like, this is Married at First Sight. This isn't Friends at First Sight. I guess it's great if you feel you get support from the other people. But I just think that that sort of takes away from talking about the couples, right? So here's something that I think is an interesting thing that's happening even between the experts themselves, right? Dr. Pepper Schwartz has been there from the beginning. Pastor Cal and Viviana is a little bit newer to this group. But I feel like I wanted to see more accountability. I really wanted to see the therapist saying, we failed you, we didn't show up enough. I don't know how much of the therapy is filmed. Is there more therapy going on that we don't know? If you know, let me know in the comments. But it feels to me like they blame the couples for not working harder. And I don't know, again, if the therapists, the experts are aligned too, because Pastor Cal encourages Lindsay to talk up, but Dr. Viviana says, oh no, we don't want to hear from Lindsay more. And there's this little friction between the 2 of them, the experts, right? And then we find out that Dr. Viviana is leaving. But the point that I'm making is something that we talk about in family systems. So in psychology, when you look at a family that comes in for therapy, part of the trickle-down effect is that if there are issues with the siblings and you see a lot of infighting, you have to look at the parents, because it's the siblings who sort of act out the family awkwardness or the dynamics. And here, because I didn't see very strong leadership, I think that's why we're seeing this sort of infighting. That's why we're seeing, because people were saying, oh, did they bully Lindsay? Were they bullying Alyssa? Who spoke the truth on camera? Who didn't? To me, these are sub-stories. But if there had been more direction, if there had been more explanation, this isn't how we treat one another, we have boundaries, then I don't think we would have seen that. And so that's the other part that I always look at systemically, what's happening. Now, bear in mind, there's always like the 4th wall, and that is production, right? They're the ones who are flaming all of this. Kevin, the host, is flaming all of this, right? They want to get something stirred up. I'm very well aware of them. But if I had to give advice to the experts, you obviously are doing some things right. You made it to 14 seasons, and I know it must be a really tough position. But the fans are calling for change. They want the original format. They liked when the therapists were more engaged. They learned more from that. And sure, you can give these inner child experiences, but they do need very specific feedback, boundaries. People are so overwhelmed at the beginning of dating. I'm sure it's just so much to take in, and it's like more structure, I think, is actually very helpful to people during high stress because it creates boundaries. And when people feel that there are boundaries about what you should do or you shouldn't, that actually builds trust. So I would love to see more boundary kind of talk about what healthy couples do, what unhealthy couples shouldn't do, to try to model for them better relationships. But let's face it, at the end of the day, I love the toast that Steve made. Marriage is hard, right? It's especially hard when you get married at first sight. But leave your comments below, and I'd love to just start a dialogue with you. Let me know, are you going to be watching season 15?